Cherubs, back in October, a work of art sold for close to $500,000 at Christie's auction house. Now that's no big deal. Everybody knows that works of art are selling for absolutely absurd amounts of money these days. And this wasn't even $500,000. I say that as though $500,000 isn't a crazy amount of money. What made this particular sale notable is that the piece, a portrait named Edward de Bellamy, was produced using an algorithm. This was the first time that a work of art produced by artificial intelligence had sold at a major auction house. The work was produced by a French collective named Obvious. They fed one program 1,500 portraits, which made it kind of a portrait expert of sorts. Then they built another program that would try to fool the original program into thinking that it was making original artwork. Man-made artwork, and the result was the Bellamy family. If you need a more detailed explanation on how they were able to produce this, I'll put a link in the description below. So some would argue that the important work of being an artist, the pulling inspiration from the past, the synthesis of that inspiration, the conception of original forms, and the act of creation, the execution, were all outsourced to a creative brain outside of the human artist. This forces us to ask a few questions, like how much outsourcing to non-human actors is too much? I mean, Pierre Fautrel and the Obvious Collective did make decisions here. They chose the original paintings, chose the algorithm, decided to print it out and stamp it with part of the code used to create it rather than a human signature. But so much of the creative process was outsourced. So though we can safely assign it to the ever-shifting definition of art, typically if you try to claim that something can't be art, you end up on the wrong side of history. And I think it's good to remember what Sarah Uris Green said in her video about machine-made art.
If you think it's art, then it's art. Video over.
Okay, but let's go one step further and ask, can it be considered great art? What I mean by that is, what determines quality in the art world, and where does Edward de Bellamy fit into that? One theory about the quality of art is the institutional theory of art, formulated by George Dickey and following an essay by Arthur Danto. This theory says that something called the art world determines the quality of a piece. Essentially, the world of artists, museums, art critics, and auction houses baptize any work deserving of appreciation by calling it art. Like Brillo boxes aren't art, but Brillo boxes by Andy Warhol, that's art. One had the blessing of the art world and the other didn't. After achieving status as art, the art world then attributes value to the piece. From this perspective, the argument about Edward de Bellamy becomes interesting. On the one hand, you have the auction house. Richard Lloyd, the international head of prints and multiples at Christie's, encouraged Obvious to put the print up for sale. He said he sees it as a tipping point and a way to open up the debate regarding AI-produced art. So at least one institution has given its blessing, and at least one collector thinks it merits $500,000. On the other side, there are artists who have been working with AI to produce art for years and who criticize the simplicity of the final product of Edward de Bellamy and the process used to create it. Mario Klingemann, for example, has been involved in a similar process for a number of years.
In the past 2 years, I probably have made, 500,000 images or so. But yeah, it's 95% of them are not interesting at all. They are really repetitive.
Now, Klingemann seems to suggest there that he defines quality vaguely as interesting. And not surprisingly, his work is certainly more interesting and his process has more artistic agency and originality than the work by Obvious. He creates spaces and searches them like a photographer for compositions and aesthetic value and formations that elicit a response from the viewer. From this perspective, the Edward de Bellamy portrait is similar to a thoughtless photo taken on a family vacation rather than a carefully considered and produced photograph by, say, a professional. The criticism isn't that art can't be made using AI. Technology has always been used in the creative process. It's that this isn't a particularly innovative or interesting use of the technology. So it seems as though the art world is split here. The auction house has baptized it as quality art, but the artists accuse the auction house of being 2 years too late to the party and consequently deficient in determining the quality of art in the space of AI. Okay, so if the institutions of the art world fail to determine quality, then what does? And does popular opinion outside of the art world matter at all? This was a question most famously asked in Paris in 1863. The French Academy, basically the definition of the institutional art world, had selected paintings for its annual salon. A group of artists appealed the decision, and the Parisians protested that popular opinion should play a role in determining the quality of art. Napoleon III then decided to hold the Salon des Refusés for those who had been rejected from the official salon. Among the classics presented at that Salon des Refusés were Whistler's Symphony in White No. 1, The White Girl, and Manet's Les Déjeuners les Robes. The French is really hard. I apologize. I watch a lot of YouTube videos about how to pronounce these things, and then I get in front of the camera, and it's in front of me, and the number of takes I've done, I can't do it. I'm going to keep trying, but next time. Clearly, the French Academy, the art world, got something wrong here, because Manet's painting has endured the test of time and is now among the most recognizable paintings in the world, even if I can't pronounce its name. So maybe the answer is somewhere between the institutional theory of art and popular consensus. Perhaps the art world put stuff up for debate, but ultimately popular opinion decides quality. A professor I had in college once made the claim that students build the canon of great literature, since professors choose the works that they believe will best help students be more thoughtful readers and better interpreters of tradition. In that way, the institution proposes candidates, but ultimately it's popular opinion, the students, that determine quality. If students do not engage with a work, it will ultimately be dropped from the curriculum and therefore the canon. So can we claim that if a work endures in the area of public opinion, if museum attendees and students at all levels continue to respond to a work positively over time, then it has quality? And that is the difference between art and great art? In other words, what role does resilience and its ability to endure time contribute to the definition of quality? Let's isolate and address the emotional element of art to examine this question. Surely, if a work of art is able to capture the hopes and fears of a very specific community at a very specific time and in a very specific place, that's a great accomplishment. But if a work of art is able to capture the hopes and fears of multiple generations across time and space, then that is a better work of art. The expressive theory of art, backed by heavyweights such as Tolstoy and Freud, holds that the purpose of an artwork is to communicate emotion. If we address the issue of quality through this lens, then the better the communication of emotion, the better the artwork. If a piece can help extend empathy or make people feel less alone across cultures and generations, then it's better than artwork that appeals to only a few people. And it appears that we're back at popular consensus conferring quality. But if I think a work of art is great, then what does it matter if nobody else does? From a certain perspective, personal knowledge and subjectivity is the only thing that matters in determining quality. To a very significant extent. If you think it's great art, then it's great art. And let's not forget the importance of not only perceiving art, but of creating art. I made a video about this. You can check it out if you'd like. It's on my YouTube channel. Sand mandalas made by Buddhist monks or Japanese tea ceremonies that exist in one space and are grounded in one moment before disappearing do not have a resilient artifact, but they do have a resilient process. In this way, participation helps determine quality. I think this applies to static works of art as well, like participating in discussions around Duchamp's fountain is, in itself, participating in the construction of artistic knowledge, even if the original urinal doesn't even exist anymore. Though the resilience of an artifact may not be a great measure of quality, the resilience of a process may have a strong relationship to quality, because it allows for a more subjective definition. In my opinion, one of the most important functions of art is its ability to rescue the individual from loneliness and more generally help make life a little more bearable. To fulfill that purpose, great art does not require consensus, but popular appeal and general consensus can help give us a common set of images, sounds, and experiences to discuss and debate together, thus helping us feel less alone and find meaning in the world around us. So let's return to the original work, the Edward de Bellamy portrait. The piece itself, for me, isn't nearly as engaging as the work of Helena Sarin, Sophia Crespo, or Anna Ridler, three artists who also work with AI to create their work. But it's good that this kind of work has received some attention from the capital A art world. The sale of this piece inspired me to discover lots of other work in order to make this video, and that's cool. I feel like it's also important for me to discuss the role of artistic intention when determining quality. In the case of the Bellamy family, the stated goal of Obvious is to democratize art creation and allow everybody to have bespoke pieces of art, a luxury that was traditionally reserved for the extremely wealthy. In that way, it allows more people to participate in the act of creation, but it also removes the ritual from the act of creation, which is so important for art. To remove the process, the synthesis of experience, and the choices made during the act of creation is to remove some of the most important elements of art. In fact, the AI artist quoted earlier, Mario Klingemann, tweeted that the process is all he cares about. I did like one thing that Gauthier Vernier, a member of the Obvious Collective, said. He said that the work forces you to try to understand your own creativity and how you would be able to replicate it. I'd encourage us all to do that and to think about what elements of the creative process are important to maintain and hold sacred as we continue to be offered shortcuts in every direction. If we can outsource everything, what parts should we defend our participation in? If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I put out a new video about the middle of every month. Thank you for watching.